In the previous session, we looked at 12 ways of using the return on marketing investment formula, 12 different examples. Now we're going to move on to the concept of return on incremental marketing investment. So, for example, if you spent X amount of budget on a marketing initiative, what would happen if you doubled that budget or the investment in that particular initiative? Or what if you did radio and you now wanted to do a sponsorship campaign? What is the incremental marketing investment? So this concept is going to help you understand how to spend your budget. It'll help you understand the concept of saturation, for example. Or maybe all you needed to do was spend a little bit more to convince your target market to purchase you. So in this session, we're going to look at the concept of incremental marketing investment. So not just return on marketing investment, but incremental marketing investment. The big concept here is don't think that spending money is a linear calculation when it comes to ROI or return on marketing investment. It might be, but it probably will not be. So for example, if you get a 10% return on investment for spending $1 million, will you get a 10% return on investment on spending $2 million? But specifically, we want to look at what is the return on investment for spending $1 million, and then separately look at the return on investment for spending another $1 million. And that second expense or marketing spend, we're going to call return on incremental marketing investment. So spending a low amount might bring you your best return on investment, and spending more might bring you more, but it also might bring you less. So we've got to talk about this concept. And we're going to end off with a case study where the marketing director doubled her marketing spend in year 2 and didn't calculate the return on incremental marketing investment and thought she had had quite a good year. We calculated that a return on marketing investment by spending the extra spend was minus 99%. So it's questionable to use the concept of ROMI on your total budget. We should look at the return on marketing investment by increments, and that will give you some great insights into whether you've saturated the market, whether they're tired of seeing your billboards, or they've just heard enough of you on the radio. So by spending more could be an absolute disaster, and we'll show you why in a real case study. At the end of the session, we'll look at the return on incremental marketing investment. In this session, session 4 of 5, we're going to be looking at the concept of spending more and more on marketing initiatives. Is that a good idea, or should we stop at a certain point in time? So lesson 2 is a closer look at ROMI and ROIMI, the concept of return on incremental marketing investment. And the only activity we're going to be looking at in this session is the return on incremental marketing investment case study or example. See if you can remember the ROMI formula and see if you can calculate this before we move on. Good. So your answer should have been 600% return on marketing investment for this particular example. Let's go back to basics. Remember that we need a baseline. And if we say that our baseline sales for no advertising or no marketing initiative is 20,000 sales per month, that's our baseline if we did no ad spending. However, now we spend some money. We spend 6,000. In this case study, we're talking dollars. 6,000 is spent. And sales then rise by 30,000, from 20,000 up to 50,000. This would be a fairly easy calculation. There, our 30,000 is in red, times by our GP of 35%, subtract the cost of the investment, divided by the cost of the investment, and we land up with a ROMI of 75%. That's good.
and quite an easy example to calculate. But if you look at the line of sales, the growth in sales, you can see it starts to flatline at the top. And that flat line at the top brings us to the concept of calculating return on incremental marketing investment. If we start spending more and more and more, we might start flatlining and we won't get the return that we hoped for. So let's look at this example. Over here, we've spent the first 5,000 on our marketing initiative, and it's taken our sales from a baseline of 30,000 up to 46,000. So we can actually work out that return on investment over there, and we have, it's 12%. Okay, don't worry about the calculation. What we're interested in is if we spend a little bit more incremental marketing expenditure, what will the return on incremental marketing investment be? In this case, we're spending another $1,000 more. It takes our sales from 46,000 up to 49,000. And so if we calculate that return on incremental marketing investment, it's only 5%. So the first 5,000 we got 12% return marketing investment. The second spend, the 1,000, we only getting a 5% return on marketing investment, and that's what we call return on incremental marketing investment. So not such a good idea to keep spending. Maybe if you spent that $1,000 on a different initiative, you could have got a much better return on investment. And maybe the market is saturated. They're tired of hearing your message. And maybe you should spend that $1,000 on social media. So that particular ROIMI over there is 5%, all right, which is lower than your first tranche of spending, which is 12%, right? So the question is, should you spend another $1,000 and it might be 4% return on marketing investment, or should you look at a completely different initiative? But don't forget that that incremental could also be a different initiative. It could also be spending just a little bit more in the first 2 weeks of a radio campaign. People become aware of you, and all they wanted to hear was another week on the radio to gain enough trust to actually go out and purchase your product. Or we could use that $1,000 for a completely different marketing initiative or sales initiative. And in this case, the return on spending a little bit more puts us up to a 40% incremental marketing investment. So over there, we could have a 12% average return on marketing investment. We spend another $1,000 and we have a beautiful spike relative to the spend. And that 40% return on incremental marketing investment says do more of the same, perhaps. Good. So here, let's just go into that example. Here we were spending $5,000, which took the baseline from 30,000 up to 46,000. And if we calculated that ROMI, it was 12%. We spend another 1,000, and it takes us up to 50,000. Okay, and we can then plug in that change from the 46,000 up to 50,000 is the 4,000 additional sales times by our GP minus the cost of the campaign divided by the cost of the campaign, and we're sitting at a 40% return on incremental marketing investment. Great little bit of marketing to explain to the rest of the team why you did so well and why you should keep spending. Good. So let's look at a real case study. This was a case study in a very big company in South Africa. And I don't want to tell you what year it was or exactly what they were selling, but let's just call it cake flour or flour. Here we're calculating the return on incremental marketing investment. This marketing director was given additional 15 million ad spend because she had such a good year the previous year. Now, nothing had changed in amongst the competitors. Nothing had changed in the channel. Nothing had changed in her company. Nothing had changed in any of the pest gel environment. And she thought, well, let's really go for the jugular vein and make an absolute killing this year, and asked for another to double her budget, which was 15.3 million. We calculated that her gross profit increase was only 46,000 Rand. So she spent 15.3 million to only make another 46,000 Rand turnover. Fortunately, her GP increased a little bit, so it wasn't as bad as it looks. Nevertheless, the profit increase was only 46%, 46,000 Rand, for spending an additional 15.3 million. So let's calculate what we call the incremental marketing expense on the previous year. So remember, the formula is still, we got to calculate net profit and divide it by the marketing spend. Here she did 46,000 Rand, which is 0.046 million. Subtract the 15.3 million, and the net profit on the top line here is minus 15.254 million. Divided by 15.3 million is minus 99.6%. Complete waste of that budget. Well done. That brings us to the end of our second last session. We're going to be moving on to session 5 of 5 next, which is the concepts of calculating return on marketing investment for sales that haven't even happened yet. So we've spent the money and we predict that sales are going to happen in the next year or 2 or 3 or 4, and we're going to look at this a very interesting concept and a lovely case study.